Morning, everyone. We have slight technical difficulty. Let me wait just a minute before we start. We may not have Dennis Weber with us today. We don't know yet. So in case he doesn't show up, I will continue to chair the meeting. Are you on? Excellent. Would you care to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Dahl? Thank you for that. I typically review the minutes as I did this time. However, I cannot make a motion to approve the minutes.
I can do that. I would make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Any discussion from anybody, audience or board? Seeing none, let's take a vote.
Aye.
I vote aye also. The minutes pass. The consent agenda will now be presented by Mr. Dahl.
Okay. Item number one, we have an agreement with PacifiCorp to provide full funding for one full-time deputy. This is up in the by the Lewis River hydroelectric projects, Yale, that area that they provide a deputy, the funding for a deputy up there, especially during the summer months. Agreement approval with Jacob Associates for the local agency standard. And it's for geotechnical and geological services for various public works projects not to exceed 200,000. Interlocal Agreement Addendum 1 with the City of Kelso to have the Cowlitz Sheriff Office provide after hours and weekend record services to the Kelso Police Department. Contract approval with Cowlitz Economic Development Council for the expenditure of rural economic development monies for 2023 and 2024 at 50,000 each. That's a continuation of what we've done in the past. Finance Committee current expense and cash flow investment authorization for October 1 of 22 to December 31 of 22, and contract completion letter to McDonald excavating for the Headquarters Landfill Cell 9 liner project. Some various letters. I don't know what federal energy people that kind of it's the federal agency that kind of looks over the dams, and there are certain things that we have to do with it. So we got a notice dated 1/19/23 regarding dam safety incident reports, high flow events, the Merwin project. Same agency, an order dated January 18th, 2023, granting extension of time to complete the Beaver Bay campground renovations. Memorandum dated 1/30/2023 from the Cowlitz County Treasurer regarding the designated depositories for all public funds. Letter dated January 2023 from the Cowlitz County Treasurer to the Mayor of the City of Longview regarding City of Longview's Resolution 2431. Letter dated 1/3/23 from the Woodland Chamber of Commerce President regarding surface mining quarry on Cardai Hill. And a letter dated 1/5/23 from the State of Washington Department of Ecology regarding National Flood Insurance Program. Various vouchers and warrants for a total amount of $5,586,916.16. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. By the way, I should make sure everybody understands you may speak on almost any item during the consent agenda and the motion agenda. Please address only those things on there. There'll be a time later on for a full open lines Friday kind of thing. Excuse me. And the consent agenda, we probably by now know, we take a single vote to accept all of those items. Any of those items can be moved out of the consent agenda to the motion agenda by a member of the board, or if there's a request from the public, it'll be considered and possibly moved up. Just for a little bit of background, FERC is a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, thank you. And that's the successor to what used to be the AEC, the Atomic Energy. Who's going to fill that word in for me? Who did? Was that you, Rick? That filled the commission?
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, Dave. And we get letters frequently from the FERC regarding any of the dams up on the Lewis. Typically, they're very perfunctory, and it's just a public disclosure of the machinations back and forth. Every now and then, there's one there that seems like it has interest, and as they cross my desk, I send them on to people in that area. So we've got a gentleman at the podium. Would you like to?
Yes, a
speak?
couple of quick questions, please, or clarifying on item number 1, the contract for services with PacifiCorp. I kind of find that interesting. Is that for the benefit of the county constituents, or is that the benefit for our power services? We all pay the bill, but it just depends on what pocket it comes out of.
I'm not sure I fully appreciate the question. The whole idea of the dam is, of course, to provide power to the people.
Correct. And the services that you're providing here or paying for a deputy to be up there, is he patrolling the dams, or is he patrolling for the safety and health of our county's constituents?
Oh, okay. Now I understand the question. It's actually a pretty delicate area of discussion. They actually pay us the salary of a deputy, and that deputy has additional obligations to patrol the area up around PacifiCorp and their dams. It's there presumably for the safety of the people. PacifiCorp pays for it.
Okay, so you answered my question. I interpreted it differently. I thought we, the county, were paying for that service, but you clarified it. It's PacifiCorp that pays for that service.
Right.
Very good. And then the second, item number 2, with the $200,000 maximum agreement with Jacobs Associates for environmental services. Is Jacobs a local provider, or are they out of, let's call it out of county? I know we have local environmental services that are available?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
Is
Somebody's on.
there staff online that can answer that?
Just the
Oh,
question on
yes, I
hiring
have-
locally when we can.
There's a hand up from Susan Eugenis. Susan can answer that question, I'm fairly sure. There you go. You're still muted, Susan.
Sorry, I bounced all over the place, didn't pop up. So this item number 2 is for geotechnical services, not environmental. And this is not a local firm. To select our firms, we go through a whole RFQ process where we get qualifications and our team reviews them and selects the most qualified person.
So just out of curiosity, where are they? Where are they founded or live?
I will go, I'm 50-50. It's either Tacoma or Seattle in this case. This is a new firm for us because our last geotech retired and did not submit, and they were coming out of the Corvallis area. So we're
Okay,
trying
thank you.
these. They have an office in Olympia.
Don't go away. We might have you more questions.
Okay.
Gentlemen at the podium.
Yes, a gentleman here. Item number 1, I want to follow up. We are now beginning to see terrorist activities against our grid, shooting out transformers and that sort of thing. Is part of this security on item number 1 to actually secure the dam and prevent that kind of stuff? Or is it just a random patrol? It's out doing who knows what else?
You know, I hate to take wild shots at it, but fortunately, we have Under Sheriff Handy with his hand up, and I think he will address that. There we go. You're muted, Dave.
Hi, so this PacifiCorp contract has been a long-term contract. We've partnered with PacifiCorp since 2008. And this is part of their federal energy licensing program that they have to do this. Skamania County also participates, Clark County, and I believe Fish and Wildlife as well. So basically what this buys is a full-time deputy, overtime patrols in the summer. And primarily it gives us a presence in the Cougar Valley or Cougar area to have a deputy there, which based on our staffing would not occur to the level it does with these programs. So most of their times they're responding to calls in the area of an emergent nature, 911 calls, providing a presence in the area. And they do swing by the dams and check on them, but it's not solely for the purpose of providing security of the dams. It does provide a law enforcement presence in the area. So we're probably 30 minutes closer by having a person up there than we would be otherwise. They check in with the dam staff from time to time, and it's a designated deputy, so they develop those relationships and are kind of the first to respond, but it's not solely to guard the dams. It's primarily to serve the citizens up there. Did that answer your question, sir?
Yes, yeah, that tells me that we do not have full-time security on the dam.
No, the dams have maintained their own security as well. I can't go into for obviously that's their proprietary information, but we
Okay.
do reach out to the dams, but it's not basically posting a guard at every dam.
Okay, very good. Okay, a little follow-up on item 7E under letters. A couple of us were at the Woodland City Council last night, and I believe that I can report accurately that the city council voted also against whatever this mining thing is. And I believe it was a unanimous vote, but don't count me on that, but I think it was.
Yeah, that Cardai Hill is actually in Clark County. And so we don't have any, we received the letter as an FYI.
Okay, 2 things. One is can I hire a sheriff deputy to be at my house or, drive up and down my street extra times as a citizen? Can I just say, I'll pay the deputy's price? Can I pay the deputy to just stand outside my house at night?
I think you saw me hesitate at the initial question on that because that's a fairly difficult question to answer. and
I know it's
probably-
more rhetorical than anything else.
Well, no, actually, it's got some points involved. And our legal staff has to deal with that. The problem is somewhere in the RCW, it says you cannot have your own private army.
Yeah,
And then one has to decide, is this a private army or not? And you can just picture what kind of hassle.
well, just wondering, wouldn't
Yeah,
mind
the
having a little
answer
extra
is no,
security.
you may not do that
Okay, I
until you
thought,
come up with the money.
thought I knew that answer. All right. So, moving on to 7E, wasn't it? The Cardai Hill thing?
Yeah,
Okay, so I was at that meeting last night. I heard a lot of discussion about it. And yes, that is over in Clark County, but that's also a part of Woodland is in Clark County. And that's why they were voting on but the thing is about that quarry is if they open it, then they're going to be running the trucks through Woodland to our favorite exit 21. And they're estimating 80 trucks a day going in and out of there. And we already know our exit 21 pretty packed up already. So anything the county has to say about it, or any say they might have in that, the people of Woodland seem really upset about it. It's like the noise and whatnot is going to affect the whole town of Woodland. But it's the traffic. You're just adding more traffic and especially big truck traffic. And according to those guys, I talked to the citizens around there and some people came from Clark County to talk about it. There's corners there where the trucks are going to have a hard time making the corner.
yes, it's a disaster under normal circumstances. Add this and it's probably going to be a
Yeah.
very, very serious problem.
So any
Making the
no that
corner.
we can give that one, I don't
Making
know.
the
I do
corner.
know it is in Clark County, but anything you can say no to that would be appreciated by the people of Clark and Cowlitz County.
Yeah, we pretty much don't have much to say on it. A little jawboning perhaps.
I know that I have all these silly questions, but I go back to the last page and it says fund voucher numbers and amounts. And it goes down to $5 million, 500, well, anyways, over $5 million. Now, I'm sure if I understood what claims they were and why they were that high, I would probably be very pleased with the amounts. But right now I'm looking at that huge amount of money and I'm asking myself, what is claims? What are they? Have they been approved for expenditure? That's a tremendous amount of money. And every Tuesday I come and there's more money going out for these claims that I have no idea what they are.
Let
Is
me
there-
ask Amy Filippello to answer that. Would that be fine with you? Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had to get moved over as a panelist here. The claims for the county are just the bills that the county pays every month. Every week, we process all kinds of bills for every department in the county, and that's what those claims are. They're not claims against the county as most people would think of a claim. It's an invoice, it's bills.
It's a normal expenditure then?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Is payroll included in claims?
I believe it is, yes.
So that's probably a big part of it.
Oh, well, Amy, come back. So
Uncle
I
Tim.
guess part of, hey, it's nice to see you today. Hey, so I guess I see this stuff like the previous speaker, and I'm always wondering, like there's 3 million, 1 million, but none
Mhm.
of this stuff is broke down as to what it's for on here. And
Sure.
I'm sure I understand what you're talking about, paying the bills and stuff, but we're inquisitive bunch here.
Mhm.
And we're kind of curious about, where did 3 million go, or 1 million, or 500,000,
Mhm.
what are these things for? And I'm not asking you to run down this list right now, but maybe in the future, we can see, what we're paying for it.
The problem with that is you'll be swamped with something that, I mean, I sit on other boards and I get the actual rolled up stuff, and it's crazy. I cannot assess it. But you're welcome to see all of that anytime. You just ask the auditor and they'll supply you everything you want to know and
Yep.
more.
Yep, anybody can come down and do a quick public records request and we can create a spreadsheet that breaks it all down by vendor, what the bill was for, all that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have to know every little detail of it, but 3 million bucks. I mean, did we buy a new piece of equipment, or, was this some paving that we did, or the
I-
sewer, just some basic information on this. I'm just saying, for my bunch out here, we
There,
like
there,
to know.
there isn't anything on there that of any major kind of that did not come through here at one time or another. You've seen our public works department say, well, we need to buy a new front loader or something
Right,
like
right,
that.
yeah.
And we approve it here. Eventually, we will see that in here. So this is the final product at that point.
Well, yeah, and that's what my question is, what's the basics of these final products? I'm not saying to do it right now, but I'm just saying in the future, hey, 3 million bucks, we bought a front end loader, as an example. Don't have to know where we got it. I mean, if we wanted to go deeper, we could, but I'm just saying.
Are you suggesting the major items, or, I mean, things
Well,
go
I
down to
mean,
$10.
major items, I mean, 3 million, that sounds major, is it?
Oh,
maybe
that's
we just
that's
don't
not
know.
that's not a single item.
Yeah, claims.
How many, just off the hand, Amy, how many uh entries went into adding up to the 3 million?
I honestly don't know, but I could sure find out for you.
Just so off the top of your head, you don't.
I would probably
Think we
say
can-
hundreds. There's
Okay,
probably
that-
hundreds of little things.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
it's a
we
little more complicated
process-
than that.
It is. We process here in the auditor's office, we process all of the invoices for every department in the county. So when you get the claims from the auditor's office, it's not just our office, it's every office in the county.
Well, like this 3 million, it says voucher numbers, and there's apparently 2 voucher numbers here, so that would be 2 things.
That could be 2 things. Yeah, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not sure what you're looking at.
It
but
look,
yeah.
it looks like 109 vouchers. So the numbers go up 100
Well, that's how you count that.
or
Okay.
109.
All right. Well, don't want to make things more difficult for you, but it is fun.
And you're welcome to come down and take a look anytime.
Well, I'll be around later. Let's do some
Okay.
lunch.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Arn, on your previous comment about, I understand you can't have a private army, but you can certainly hire private security, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The other question I have regarding the comments about the trucks and the quarry, isn't the quarry in Cowlitz County?
That's a different quarry. You're thinking of one that was discussed, it's been on the hot plate for 3 years or more. This is in Clark County.
It's in Clark County. Where's it coming back across to get into traffic going through Woodland?
You know that little bridge that's spans the Lewis from from the oak tree, if you were just to go due south, you'd probably
Yeah,
be on that bridge, something like that.
okay.
And it's the corner there that's very difficult for any big trucks to make. And typically these trucks want to be a tandem.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Apparently 7E has become a very popular item today. I would ask you to be very much in favor of this. And I'll just comment on what I've heard. I didn't go to the city council meeting last night. As you may or may not know, there is no sand produced in Cowlitz County, and the rock supply is getting shorter and shorter by the day. Somebody has to produce rock from somewhere. And if these people want to be the most blatant and perfect example of not in my backyard, they're perfectly welcome to do that. I would suggest their complaints about noise. I'm not going to say I-5 runs right down the middle of Woodland because I think there's more of Woodland on the west side than on the east side of town. But I-5 runs through the city of Woodland. So I think any noise complaints are very far out in left field, so to speak. And as for driving a truck through there, I'm sure that road is built to legal specifications that trucks can very well get through there. The road that goes underneath I-5 and which would connect to the little bridge which you mentioned is a 4-lane road with left turn lanes in it. That's enough room to get a set of doubles as a belly dump or a truck and pup through that intersection quite well. Now, if people want to go across the stop line and get themselves out in harm's way, that's their problem and created a hazard. Everybody drives by the legal definition of how to drive on the roadways. Everything will be fine. And we need to get some rock from somewhere because one of these days we do that, there will be no rock to be had for anything. And I would say the decreasing supply of rock has probably increased the price of a load of rock by 100% in the last 5 years because there is no rock available. As you guys may well know, there's one operating pit west of Longview. When the rock they've got crushed is gone, it's done. And there's one out on Tower Road. Find another rock pit in Cowlitz County. And as I started this up saying, there is no sand in Cowlitz County. And isn't that a crying shame with all that volcanic debris out there? There's no sand produced in Cowlitz County. If you want sand, you can go to Lewis County and get it. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Just to speak up about the sand, I happen to have dealt with a local quarry, probably the one he's talking about. They actually have sand in the property next to them, and they buy the sand from that guy. And there is sand being made, but it is in short supply.
How are we doing, Rick?
We're doing well.
I think we could use a motion.
Want me to move it? I move to approve the consent agenda as I've gone over, plus the vouchers, claims and vouchers in amount of $5,586,916.16.
There's a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion does pass. Now we go to the motion items. And we have a whole bunch from our good friend, Health and Human Services, Gina James. Good morning.
Good morning. Gina James, Health and Human Services. We do have a number of items on the agenda today. They are all related to document recording fees. I'll kind of give just a really brief overview and then we can address each one. So we have 5 contracts on the agenda today. As I mentioned, these are all contracts funded by document recording fees. There are 3 of them are for coordinated entry services. We work with 3 different providers to do coordinated entry services. And then we have a couple of other projects that the county has been involved in for a number of years with supporting emergency support shelter operations, and a project with Lower Columbia CAP. It's a group home project that houses 6 high-risk individuals. As I mentioned, these are all for document recording fee contracts that run on the calendar year. So these contracts would be from January 1st of 2023 through December 31st of 2023. And the first item is our contract with Emergency Support Shelter. This contract is up to $100,000 and it supports their basic shelter operations. So to keep their doors open to provide shelter for those individuals in our community who are fleeing domestic violence. I'm happy to answer any questions on that one.
Did we have a challenge element in that one?
So we have had some discussion about, the board had an idea to match funds raised by private donations to the agency. I had some brief conversation with Emergency Support Shelter about that. And they were very appreciative of the consideration of the board. They are they operate off of a state fiscal year. So when we were talking about their budget deficit, I think it was $141,000. They're looking at that deficit to hit them in June of this year because they have a state fiscal year budget. I did ask about the amount of individual donations that came in last calendar year. So for the calendar year 2022, they had 246 individuals. This did not include businesses. So just individual donations that totaled $162,000.
182?
162.
162.
Mhm. Yep. So we could consider matching a portion of that amount of donations in this award, in this contract that is in front of the board today. Or we could look at, I think part of our discussion last week was looking at what comes in this year in individual donations and then matching that towards the end of the calendar year. They are on as I mentioned, they're on a state fiscal year budget. So their funding, they'll start to dip into their reserves at in July is what was explained to me.
I admit I'm a little confused here because we weren't trying to take into consideration what I would call an arbitrary boundary there. Our contract here is for the calendar year of 2023. So I would think regardless of what their funding schedule might be, it's would you like it or not? And I'm puzzled there how that ties into the June fiscal year.
As I learned more about their budget and how they operate and was sharing with the board last week that they anticipate not being able to cover about $141,000 of costs to run the shelter, that they're looking at the state fiscal year. Because our contract is one piece of their overall funding. And so a majority of their funding is state fiscal year, runs on that cycle. And so they kind of look at that budget on that timeline. If that makes sense.
What? Excuse me, yeah, I get the budget. I'm a little bit kind of with Commissioner Mortensen. Our offer was just, their fundraising from this point forward, we'd be willing to match up to a certain point. I don't really care when their budget ends. I mean, if they're raising money through August or September or whatever, we just knew that they had a shortfall and I expressed my belief in the program and we're trying to put something out to help a little bit. So, I mean, I think that offer is there.
Sure.
Yeah, and if they had, 162,000 in private donations last year, they should easily be able to hit a mark that we set to match.
Yeah, and that's totally, it's absolutely, they would be very appreciative of that. I just wanted to share the additional information I had learned.
Gotcha.
So I had left by the way, for the public, we had workshopped this last week in fair amount of detail. And I was left with the impression that this contract would actually have the match on that. Was that something that I just fantasized on, or did you? Yeah.
No, I thought it was kind of all gonna be together with their. It'd be, because we granted the 100,000 and we said, well, with the numbers we were throwing out, if they raised 50, we'd match 50 to help them.
Right, so the
With
contract
that.
would say you've got 100,000 and you can get up to another 50,000 if you get a
Right,
match. And
right.
It was a 50-50
see.
match.
Okay, that may have been
Okay.
me misunderstanding. That makes sense to me now, saying, okay, the contract could be for 150,000 with the 50,000 is a match of private donations.
Of private donations, yeah,
Yeah.
to help them out a bit.
I think at some point it's really an academic distinction, but it has a spirit behind it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I think this is sufficiently important that I'd like to hear from the public now on this particular issue. How do they feel about this emergency support shelter?
Well, I know that Longview has just raised their taxes. Have you gone to them for any donations, the Longview City Council?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
This is have you gone to the cities, Longview, Kelso? Have you gone to them for any donations?
I have not, no,
Or anybody else?
I don't know.
Because I do believe that Longview's put an extra tax on their people. And I think that needs to go back to the people in this form if they can. So it'd be probably behoove you to approach them for a handout for this. I think that, and Kelso as well.
I'm not aware what, those cities might have something they do with it, but I'm not aware with how they do. Yeah.
But in some sense, it really doesn't matter because they have a shortfall and they didn't say that's a shortfall because the county didn't do something or the
Right.
cities didn't do something. It's a shortfall.
Yeah,
Okay, so I guess in all of our questioning of stuff, we always want to see what are we getting for our money here? Is this, and I know that you probably can't say a lot of details because I think some of this is protected. But for $100,000, what are we getting? Does the county own this some way? I mean, is this like a building somewhere that we own as a county, or is this a separate, some kind of organization? Emergency support shelter is kind of a broad term. Is that a
That's-
charity organization or something?
That's the name of their organization, is Emergency Support Shelter.
So there's no Inc. on there or LLC, huh? So they're a private entity then?
They're a separate, nonprofit agency, and they solely provide service to individuals who are fleeing domestic violence. So the shelter that they have open, this last year, they served 181 clients in that shelter. So they come in at all hours, they're open 24/7. So they can take people in who are fleeing domestic violence situations, shelter them for a period of time until they can help them find a safe place to exit to.
So you said 100 people last year. Is that right?
181.
181.
And they typically are about 50-50
Not
adults and
super-
children.
Really, that's not too bad. That's kind of a deal right there. So that's good to know.
Yeah, one thing that is good to know also is that in the past, prior to the COVID pandemic, they could, they had fundraisers, huge fundraisers, huge meetings, a lot of people attending at the event
Yeah.
center, and it would be a breakfast or a dinner or something like that. And they got donations, but they haven't been able to do that for,
Couple years.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
quite a while, they
Good
were
year.
pretty active in trying to raise
Yeah.
a lot of funds themselves.
Which
At
is,
this point in time, you couldn't even really, I don't know if you can know where the home is now, but at one point in time, they were pretty secretive about where the home was. I mean, I passed on, you know, I worked for a lot of years and early in the career, I've seen a person that needed that help, and you don't know when these incidents arrives. It can happen in the middle of the night, you know, something comes up and they really have no place to go. So I have seen it be a benefit to.
yeah.
well, you know, I wouldn't be against, I guess, you know, it just comes back to all the things all the time. When does government quit? Or, and I mean, I'm not saying to cut all this off, but I'm just saying, how much of this is our responsibility? You know, if you're in a bad relationship, I feel for you. I do. I've been in those myself. And, but I mean, at a point, I mean, I'm just going to go back to the fact that we're 31 trillion in debt, right? I mean, that's kind of a big number. We're broke already. How much more can we afford to pay for all the time? And in people's personal lives. Now, I'm not against helping people out, but some point in our government dealings, we've got to say, hey, you know what? This is really not a government function. You know, and I mean, I know I have contributed to this shelter myself. And that's where I feel like the money should come from on these things. Like this, why is this even here? You know, it's, if we've got compassion as our community, and I mean, like I say, I've donated to this, but to ask people all over the whole county to give up our money, where does government stop? You know?
Yeah, I think that is
Yeah.
an excellent question. We are trying over time to bring us to a place that is more reasonable. You just can't get there from here in one day. I've said before, social policies are what people depend on, and then they get so dependent on it that it's really, you really have to taper them off. In this case, there's a very nice word. It's called emergency. And even though we are responsible for our own choices and our own situation, emergencies of a domestic violence in particular seem to happen. And I think psychologists and psychiatrists can't seem to control it or predict it in a way that is avoidable. I mean, I think you know what I'm trying to say. So I think this is an exception to where we felt we have this money that is taken from you over certainly my objection, but it's probably over his objection.
Yeah.
And we want to then spend it in as wise a manner as possible. And you've seen us struggle here over that for quite some time. Anyhow, enough advertising.
Good morning. So you were looking for some comments and just observations of what I've seen that the shelter provides to the community is, yes, a safe haven to victims, but they do a lot more than that. So I know of at least 3 or 4 people that have received help from emergency support shelter, but they never actually lived or was housed there. And that's just the people that I know of. I'm sure I know a lot of people that have never, you know, told me their personal information about having received some help from them, but they have helped people that I know with just knowing how to navigate a situation, sort of like advice, like when you're, I guess, up against a wall with crisis, you don't really know who to trust, who to talk to. You probably don't have a lot of money. And so they were a great resource to them of, hey, I'm in this situation. What are some of my options? What are some other service providers, who should I talk to? And they were super instrumental with helping these people navigate their situation, even though they were never housed in the facility. I know somebody who helped the emergency support shelter receive a grant from like a big corporate company, and that company was based out of Texas, and they awarded this grant to our local emergency support shelter because this person that I know applied for the grant and they were awarded that. So I don't know what made them qualify for it or whatnot, but I'm just talking about, what they provide in our community simply existing, and that I do feel that there is community support, but I'm just one person voicing what my observations are. As far as the money aspect, yeah, that does get tricky about how to keep something going. I do like the idea of the match, and it makes me think about, okay, well, what maybe could I give so that I help with whatever might, match situation happen. And if I don't have a lot of disposable funds to do that, maybe I have something that I don't need anymore and I could sell it and help with the match. So anyway, those are just some ramblings off the top of my head, and I hope it's helpful.
Thank you.
Feel that it would have been helpful to have this heading for Health and Human Services have said recording fees. That's where the funds are coming from, is the recording fees. Our recording fees historically were used for building and safety back in the day, for permitting processes, to pay for staff to inspect buildings. And this was back to the 70s. Since then, they've been hijacked by the recording fees have been hijacked by Washington State government. Our county fees go up to Olympia, and then they get funneled back where they should have been left to begin with, for us to decide where the funds go and are best served. We get 40% of these fees, not the whole meal deal. Right now, the economy is what it is. I hate that statement, but that's what you have to say. We may very well start seeing housing decline and less building and less development. I don't want to be a negative person, but that could happen. It has historically happened as recently as 2008. Now, sitting back and thinking as a mature adult here of how can I make this work? If we were in worse economic situation, I would suggest a 50-50. Or a shorter time frame for a contract. Or let's say of this $100,000, we put up $50,000 and ask for matching funds. That could be a 75 or 100%. Who knows? But that's a way of thinking of how to finance something other than just blatantly doing what past practices are. A thought. I happen to really think that this is seriously needed for the safety of those abused in the community. But it wouldn't hurt to put a fund up front to show that you are actively in support of these people, these entities, and then going back to the cities and saying, can you match us 50-50? Put your money where your mouth is. Constantly saying that we don't care when we do. What about you? Just a thought. I don't like seeing you
Thank you.
gentlemen in the hot seat.
At this point, we are beyond the time for the public hearing on the budget amendment. Do we have someone doing the budget amendment? There she is, hidden way back there. Do you want to interrupt the proceeding at the moment and go to the budget amendment, or? I beg your pardon? I know that, but I'm asking you what you would prefer. I don't want to tie you up unnecessarily. Okay. So let me see if we can get an amendment motion on this one, amending it to add a challenge, a $50,000 50/50 challenge.
Thinking how to word that. I would move to approve the emergency port shelter funding from January 1st to 2023 through December 31st, 2003, in an amount not to exceed 100,000, with an additional 50,000 available based upon personal contribution match of like amount. That makes sense? Okay.
Thank you. There's a motion to amend the motion. I should ask if there's further discussion. I think we've discussed it enough, but it's always open.
You have someone online that requested to speak.
I don't see a hand.
So Harris,
I beg your pardon?
so Harris.
Unfortunately, I didn't catch the name and I don't see a hand up. So how do I know this?
So hyphen,
Oh, is it on here somewhere?
you just.
All right. Oh, the
Commissioners.
sheriff's office. Yes, thank you.
I was just going to speak on behalf of the emergency support shelter. I used to be the board chairman for the emergency support shelter a couple years back, and I think that the recording fees is a good use for the shelter with all the things that you have on the plate with homeless and different things. I've been extremely impressed with emergency support shelter working to make sure that the people that flee domestic violence have a place to live and stay housed and don't become homeless. They do a number of things besides just have the people that come there. And a lot of that doesn't get publicized. A couple things that I know of is they do safety planning for people that are fleeing domestic violence, even if they aren't in the shelter. They have people that are counselors that you can text at any time of night and let them know that you're in a situation and they'll help you. They help with court documents so you can get restraining orders and help keep your family safe. They help reach out with runaways and some of the sex crimes that are out there. And I think that the 50/50 match will be a great thing for the $50,000. They're really good about advertising that, and the citizens in Cowlitz County usually step up to any challenge like that. So I think this will be a great contract for them.
Okay, thank you. Can you make it short?
I'm gonna keep it real short. The description that was given when the initial explanation was given pretty much matches what item number 9 reads. And I don't know the difference between the two of those, but if you add them up, that's $135,000 right there. So I'm not sure, as you stack these things up, how many of these are duplicate services, or we just changed the description in order to give each one of these agencies more money. So I'm not sure I understand the whole flow of this thing, but I don't know what's the difference between 8 and 9 on here.
Yeah, there's no game here, but do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yep. So item 8 is solely for shelter operations. So keeping their doors open to emergency shelter and being able to take in victims of domestic violence. Item number 9 is for a service. It's for a different service. It's called coordinated entry. And we've given sort of the description here, but we didn't call it coordinated entry in here. The contract though does, and it talks about the coordinated entry service and what's expected for that. So it is two different services.
So all in all, we're not talking about $560 or so a person. We're talking about $750 plus dollars per person on that 181 that they helped last year, if you use these numbers.
Right. Those numbers I gave were just for shelter. They've also done coordinated entry services last year that has different numbers. I'll find it. So they're providing two different services. So it's not necessarily apples to divide the number I previously gave with the total of both services, because they have done some other work in there as well.
And there's also now an additional $50,000, up to $50,000 more dollars with matching funds.
Mhm.
So,
Let me chime in here. Item number 9 is a fee for service. That's a not to exceed number. If they do not provide a service, they don't get any money. So they have to, it's a bill by event. Is that not right?
Right.
The other one is just an outright grant.
right. The operating cost is number 8. If they never service a single person, they get the $100,000 just to keep the doors open. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it's a pretty extreme description. They would not keep their doors open if they didn't have anybody to come.
Okay, so it's $100,000 if it's one person to keep the doors open. All right, that's what I understand. You can throw it out there and say it might be 500 this year, and the way the economy is going, it sure as hell might be. I don't know.
Well, and the 100,000, it is to keep their doors open, but I would say that they're at a staffing level to accommodate their maximum capacity. So if their capacity changed, then I would anticipate their operational cost to change as well.
What's their maximum capacity?
They currently have, I believe they have either 8 to 10 rooms open, so they can serve 8 to 10 households at a time. It's usually about 20 to 25 people because of the children.
Okay,
So we have a motion on the floor to amend the original motion. I don't see any more discussion. Any more discussion?
No.
Let's go ahead and vote on the amendment.
Aye.
I vote aye also. The amendment passes. Now we vote on the main motion, which is the item number 8. Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
I also vote, or I vote aye also, and that motion passes. Now I think we interrupt the proceedings for the budget hearing. Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Building and Planning Director. Wearing hats as your Finance Director right now. So in front of you today, we have the first 2023 budget amendment for our current year. The board amended the budget and approved an amended budget in December. And since the board adopted the amended budget, we have some additional changes. The highlights are we've tracked and monitored all of the staffing changes, personnel changes, the movement within the county. And so that is documented within this budget. The sheriff's office has settled their contract at the end of last year. And so their wage changes are reflected in these numbers, as well as all of the departments and funds that their deputies hit. So there's different funds within this budget amendment, but it's their holistic contract that's settled. Superior Court had some minor tools and stuff that they've purchased. We had some interpreter services, additional interpreter services at District Court. We had a outside counsel for community long-range planning to help us work on the Woodland bottoms. And we received some additional state monies for the Blake decision for the indigent defense attorneys through our OPD office. So altogether, our general fund, we have an additional $661,000 of salaries adjustments and changes in addition to what the commissioners approved in December. And then in our special revenue, enterprise funds, other funds, we have some accounting changes, some additional law enforcement agency, different funds that they've hit, the boat safety, law and justice funds, just within their contract settling. We have some ARPA expenditures that we've established a budget for. Looking at everything in total, some capital contributions and some utility payments that we've made, whether we got the equipment at the end of last year, or we didn't get the equipment, it went into their ending fund, and now we have the expenditure coming out. So this is everything that the board has already approved. This is us just tracking the changes that since basically November, middle of November, when we grabbed all the data and moved it forward for the board's agenda. So this is everything that we know of through last week through since November. So this is for the very first 2023 amended budget.
So I feel compelled to ask a question that you can't answer, which is, because the board has approved all of this, you're just documenting it.
I am correct.
And now we're going to go through a process that says we open a public hearing after we both get to comment on this.
Mhm.
We open a public hearing, they get to speak, and regardless of what they say, regardless of what we say, we basically have to say yes on the budget because we've already approved it.
We take everybody's advice and comments into consideration, especially if they have comments on stuff that the board has already approved. It may change your decisions or decisions moving forward. Some of the stuff that you may or may not approve with Health and Human Services this morning, that would be in the next budget amendment. We don't know those expenditures are coming out as of today, but if the board agrees to those expenditures, I'm just using this as an example, we track those and then we move them into a payable line so we can pay these contracts.
Excellent. So if we were to find, or the public were to find something objectionable in the budget,
Mhm.
it would have to be something that we could rescind.
Correct.
Otherwise, it's already spent or something
Like the
that.
deputy's contract, for instance.
Right.
The board approved it at the very end of last year, and it's a 3-year agreement. So it's, now we know what our numbers are and we can plan for that. So we shouldn't have any changes for their salaries for the next, through the 3rd year of their contract. But we do track movement throughout the departments, so we
And
track.
and during this calendar year, we're also going to have additional contracts.
Yes, we hope they all get settled this year. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
How many are we going to?
Oh, I don't know
Cross.
if HR's on. I think there's 5 or 6 up this year. There's majority of them are all up.
Yeah. Questions?
No, I knew we had some contracts coming up, and those are always an unknown. You don't know where those are gonna weed out. You can kind of guess, but yeah.
We take a, thumb in the air. We can hope
Yeah.
to kind of have an idea, but it's all amongst, the negotiations that happen. So.
Yeah.
We shall wait and see on that one. That stuff will probably be late fall before we know.
If I take a look at a very simple elementary view of expenditures and revenues, where does the $651,000 come from? Is that purely expenditures?
Mhm.
Okay, so at the end, the circumstances are now that the prior 2023 budget, we're going to cough up another 651,000.
That's correct. This
Okay,
is in addition to what was already approved.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Shall we open up to the public?
Yeah.
The public hearing is now open.
Would you please repeat what you said about the shortages or shortfall regarding the woodland bottoms?
It's not a shortfall. We have added money to the planning budget to hire outside counsel to help us with negotiating with the city of Woodland.
Okay.
It was ongoing prior to several of the articles in the paper. Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anyone else in the public? Going once? Going twice? Ooh, a hand up. Where did it go? Oh, it's the prosecuting attorney's office. Please go ahead. There we go. You are muted in case you don't know.
There we go.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioner. Douglas Jensen from the prosecutor's office. Just for clarification, what we've tried to do with the planning department is to find them consultants for the negotiations with Woodland. It's a unique scenario with Woodland being a growth management planning city and the county being a non-growth management. I reached out to Seattle Council, who also has consultant planners to be brought in to assist your planning department. He is not being hired as counsel, has not received a special deputy appointment from Prosecutor Jovakainen. So as we move forward, he'll be, and his staff will be supplementing your planning staff and working its way through to some type of negotiated resolution.
Yeah, and we don't have any reasonable a priori estimate as to how much this will cost us. True?
It's true, and part of the consequence of the dispute is that there's no similar scenario that's been encountered in Washington State with a GMA, non-GMA planning bodies sort of butting heads as to who gets the last word. So we will work our way through it. In particular, it's a process of ensuring the county's interest and the county's approach to real property rights are defended.
I much appreciate that, and I'm pretty sure everybody else on the board is quite appreciative of that.
Okay, that's all.
Okay,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's so tempting to.
So this is very interesting because this all came up last night at the Woodland City Council, and they talked for a long time about their growth and et cetera. The fact is, and when you talk to the officials, and then you talk to the people, and then one thing comes clear. They don't have the infrastructure to support more growth in Woodland. That's their biggest problem. They got lots of land out there that they could, the bottoms especially, but it comes all back to exit 21. We've had these discussions about exit 21 before. So it's kind of like, man, at a point you're full, you just can't go anymore. Because can you imagine? When I was talking to the people last night, I was comparing this to Lexington. Now, Lexington is another place where these apartments that they're putting in, and I can see them from my house, and they're like huge. I don't even know how many units are in there, but Lexington's already a traffic nightmare. And you're going to add another at least 500 cars to that. Holy cow. And if you develop the Woodland bottoms, you'll be all day and night just getting in and out of your place. It's like we know what a mess exit 21 is. So it's like at a point, don't we just say, hey, look, no more, you know? And the people there were really in favor of it. The Woodland City Council people, they were speaking about the same things that we talk about. Accessory dwelling units, you know, putting apartments here or there places rather than houses, but it's limited in what they can do. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, but they wouldn't let me talk. I don't know why, but you know, it was like the cottage house idea, you know, which is a great idea. It would fit into what they're talking about. And if you ever get a chance to speak to any of those guys, you might mention that plan because it's a good one where you can actually own a house, you know, and they talked around that. And I really wanted to bring it up, but I just couldn't. But the fact is, Woodland is full. They have developed to the point where they don't have any infrastructure to continue to support more growth. And unless you're going to build whole new roadways in there and a whole new exit 21, all of this is just going to lead to more problems. This just goes right along with that quarry and adding 80 more trucks to that exit. It's full. They can't take any more.
I agree with you. I think,
Yeah.
one thing to note, there's been angst over exit 21 now for years.
Yeah.
And Tracy probably remembers we authorized 2.6 million of our ARPA money to help them. And the plan was that that's kind of what they needed to carry them over their mark. I think they were looking at it's a Band-Aid because for a total of 14 million or something like that, they were going to fix exit 21, which again would just be a Band-Aid. Everything you said is completely my understanding of it also. They're the carts before the horse, that they don't have the infrastructure. It does lead me to question one thing is, what is the drive for the growth? Because there seems like there is this urge to grow. And yet you talk to a majority of the people, I think, like you said, and they're like, no, I'm happy how it is. I don't want more problems. Yet administrations think we got to do it.
I should just stay in the front row, I guess.
Well, we might have to close the hearing any moment.
Yeah, that's what they told me at Woodland last night.
If you see me start inching towards the gavel.
Well, it's kind of funny because, you know, so many of these discussions that they were having last night are the same discussions that we've been having here. And, you know, the fact is that Woodland, and they made some interesting points. They have a development guy that's in their board and, or one of their employees or something. I forget what they called the guy, but he made interesting points, a lot of them, you know, about housing and how it was in the past, how it is now, and when they develop in the future. So if you're going to develop and have large houses, then you've got to run the water, the sewer, the power. But when you do that, okay, so you run a mile worth of pipe, you're going to serve 20 people off that pipe, or are you going to serve 100 people off that pipe? You know, and that was one of the things that they're talking about is they want to concentrate things more in an economic sense. Okay.
Lots of discussion, but we have a lady here who has to present the budget. Let's discuss that in the open session.
Okay. All right. I haven't even got to my main topic yet.
So any other comments on the budget? Please stay on the budget. That means you.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say that we had appropriated 2.6 million for Woodland to do what? And did they? And where'd that money go?
So 2.6 million was allocated to the city of Woodland to help in their study, I believe, for their exit 21 to alleviate some of their traffic problems. We are still waiting to hear back from the city administrator and the mayor to get a contract in place. We still currently have that money.
Okay,
We are waiting to get a contract in place to allocate that money, but we're waiting on their end. They know they've been awarded the money. If they choose to use it, we're just waiting for their response to get the contract in
okay,
place.
great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments from the public? No hands, no comments? The public hearing is closed. Not loud enough?
Yes.
Okay. And I think in the words of the famous man, what is your pleasure?
Would move to approve the budget amendments presented.
I take that as you are making a motion.
Mhm.
There's a motion to approve the budget amendment as presented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I vote aye also. Motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Now back to torturing HHS. One thing that maybe applies here while Gina sets up, there is current discussion for the doc recording fees to go up another $100.
Yeah.
I don't know where that stands, but
I don't know where that stands either, but think about it. If they're worried that the economy is going to go down and people have that concern and there's going to be less house sales, what does government usually do to maintain the money that comes in? They raise the fee, right? So the conversation it's not something that surprises me. If I was sitting up in one of those seats, I would hope I would vote against it. Well, I'm sure I would, but we'll see what happens.
yeah.
How do you represent us if they know?
Well, we have our two representatives and our senator, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think they listen to us pretty well.
Well, we're split county. We've got both the 19th and the 20th.
Yeah.
And I think they're all uniformly going to say no. But they do that on a lot of things and they get outvoted. I did want to add one more thing regarding emergency support shelter. We have thought about that a bit and discussed it. And one thing that always weighs heavily on my mind is the allure of free money. We don't want to take a viable private organization and make them be dependent on the government. And so we always think about that, I'm sure. And it's like, oh, I hope they understand. Anyhow, you're on again, Gina.
Yes, thank you. So the next three items are all related to what's called coordinated entry. And just to give a brief, in case anyone's not familiar with that term, coordinated entry is a system in place in our community where individuals can connect with any of these providers that we contract with for coordinated entry. Coordinated entry will talk with individuals who are experiencing homelessness or at risk, meaning they're may need to be out of their housing within 14 days, and talk to them about the resources that are in the community, kind of learn briefly about their situation, see if there's anything they can connect them to. In that process, there's a bit of information that's collected and entered into a database that is then used to make referrals to programs, housing programs that are required to accept referrals only through coordinated entry. And so we're able through this system to refer individuals to housing programs with the help of these providers. It's looked different in the past. We used to work with one primary provider, and the last few years we've have been working with these three providers: Emergency Support Shelter, Cowlitz Family Health Center, and Community House on Broadway. They all sort of connect with slightly different populations, and we've found that it's helpful in getting, being able to make the referrals that are needed for those housing programs. So the first item, item 9, is a contract with Emergency Support Shelter. They will complete this coordinated entry process with individuals who are staying in the shelter, so that then there may be a door opened for a housing referral as a result of that. This contract is up to $35,000. It is cost reimbursement. So if they, that amount is just an up to amount.
All three of them are that way?
Yes.
And when you say cost reimbursement, do you mean cost or do you mean we have established a price?
They have to expend the cost for doing the service and then submit reimbursement to us.
So going to agency number 9 versus agency -10 for a single event might be 2 totally different amounts of money.
Yes and no. I think it's complicated. They're,
For the same service.
it's the same service. They are different amounts. As I mentioned, all of these agencies kind of serve a different population and have a different way that they do coordinated entry in the community. It is all the same process, so we get the same result at the end of the day, but it just happens in different ways.
Interesting.
Do typically over the term of the contract is all the funds used?
All of the funds, Emergency Support Shelter typically uses all of the funds, and so does Community House on Broadway. Family Health Center has not historically, but we're having some conversations with, have some ideas about kind of utilizing some of their different programs
Yeah.
for coordinated entry as well.
I'm just trying to emphasize the point that this is really a gross amount we look at.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that's the amount spend. Will they try and research? Sure, but it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
Probably not right now, but at some point I'd like to hear the high and the low. So I would say there are discrepancies in cost. And we are in other situations requested to contract with the lowest bidder. And I don't know that that'd be much of an impact, but I'm wondering here why I'm operating somewhat blindly with the basic assumption that you're taking care of things, but I just like to see what the discrepancies are.
Sure. Yeah. And I know,
Make sense?
I think in more of the public works arena, there's those rules about going with the lowest bidder. When we do the RFP process for these types, we kind of have a little bit more flexibility with that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not trying to apply RCW regulations. And I know you can't really oftentimes compare things, and the rules, the lowest bidder rule gets us into all kinds of trouble. I just want to know the data so we can choose judiciously our next step.
Sure. Yeah.
One question I've got, and I've never been able to kind of grasp this, we've got all these people wandering all over Cowlitz County. And what percentage of them actually go through the process of this coordinated entry?
That's a good question. I'm not able to answer that. We don't know when someone goes through coordinated entry. We don't know where they're staying, and the majority are literally homeless. And so that system doesn't capture, we don't have a way to sort, for example, who's connected based on, they live at the lake, for example. We just don't have a way to do that. What coordinated entry will tell individuals is please check back in with us every 90 days just to keep you active in our system. Just let us know you're still looking for housing so that we can kind of keep you updated on on our list. So we ask individuals to do that and kind of take that initiative.
Which probably doesn't happen. Okay, now that the city of Longview has hired their own Casey Settlemeyer, is she going around somehow putting people into that system?
I haven't connected with her to ask specifically about her conversations in terms of coordinated entry with individuals. I would make an assumption, and I know she did this with individuals at the camp to say, hey, here's a brochure, connect with coordinated entry. And we've also had some staff from coordinated entry going down to the camp and go out into the community as well to do this process. So we do have brochures that anyone's welcome to provide or hand out, and we'll get those to individuals who need some to hand out.
Aren't you in the middle of your once a year point count or whatever you call it? How many have we found?
I don't have final numbers yet. We just were wrapping that up last week for the point in time count.
Okay, was everybody in that process handed a brochure and said, get your butt over here and get registered, so to speak?
Maybe I'd have to double check with the outreach teams we worked with. I'm not sure that they provided coordinated entry brochures. We were kind of focused on the point in time surveys and whatnot,
But actually, if you go back to Freedom, nobody should have to be a part of that system.
it's completely optional.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
A question with respect to that, do you have an estimate how much it cost us to do the point in time?
How much it cost us? I will.
Cost the public, through us probably.
Yeah, well, I will say historically, we've done a large event where we put on like a resource fair and invite individuals in, provide a hot meal, some different community resources, and we would do the point in time surveys that way. That event usually costs maybe around $5,000 to do that event. This last year, the last few years, we've changed the method of doing the point in time count a little bit. So we're working with outreach teams who regularly connect out and about with individuals who are living unsheltered. And they've assisted us in that process. It's cost minimal. I would say this year it probably cost us $1,000.
And I'm never quite sure where we should draw the line. This is for me an interesting discussion. Does it help us do the motions? Maybe not. Does it carry over to the citizen discussion? It should, but it gets interrupted. So I'm going to press it just a little bit and maybe have to back off. If in a point in time measurement event, or epoch, we come out with the number, say 1,000, just a number I picked out of the air. But let's say that represents the actual result of that effort. And if you were to do it 2 weeks after that with another group of people, that is other people executing the point in time count, would it surprise you that instead of 1,000 people, they came up with 800?
It wouldn't surprise me, no.
It would not.
No,
And if they came up with 1,500, it still wouldn't surprise you.
probably not. I mean, I think we've talked about this before with the point in time count. It's really difficult, we're kind of this task of counting everyone in the community who's
Yeah.
currently homeless. And, we'll never know for sure that we got everybody or not. And it will depend on, we've seen in the past things like the weather really affects how people are counted and whatnot. So it wouldn't surprise me to see variations even close together in time.
Yeah, okay, so I offered a huge variation. And the reason I say that is because we tend to make decisions hanging our hat on the numbers presented to us that typically don't mean very much. We should doubt a lot of data that we see because it's pretty poorly done and may not even be doable. And with point in time, things also, the definitions of things seem to wander. Okay, thank you.
So I just have a question. You stated that they have to go through coordinated entry for specific programs.
Mhm.
What are those? Are those government programs? Are like, what kind of programs are
Make
those?
sure you try and speak into the microphone.
Sorry.
The programs, there's certain programs that are, when I say required to accept referrals through coordinated entry, there are some programs that are funded like directly from the Department of Commerce or directly from HUD to agencies in our community that HUD or the Department of Commerce says you are required, agency X, to only accept referrals to this program from coordinated entry or through coordinated
And
entry.
how does
And-
somebody become a coordinated entry
Provider.
provider?
A few years back, we did an RFP process where we solicited proposals from entities interested in becoming a coordinated entry provider. So we went through that process and we selected these 3 providers at that time to be the coordinated entry providers. We could at any time choose to open that RFP again and consider other agencies as well.
So we chose the Family Health Center, who does not use all their funding every year.
Mhm.
So could we look at other organizations trying to find somebody that would actually utilize those dollars?
We could open an RFP, open another RFP and solicit for new proposals again if we wanted to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, Gina.
Don't apologize.
So I'm just curious, you give these guys, these $50,000 chunks. This is like for them to administer. This is their administration, that's what you're paying for, right?
It's primarily staff time
Yeah.
doing the coordinated entry process with connecting directly with individuals. who
Right,
come
so
in.
they're not going out and renting places for people to stay with this
No.
money. This is strictly to pay for their administration then.
There's staff costs to do this particular service. Yeah.
And HUD and Department of Commerce require, they won't help anybody that hasn't been through coordinated entry. Is that what I'm hearing?
They've made it a requirement for the programs they fund to only accept referrals through coordinated entry.
Okay.
I recently, maybe even yesterday, read an article that an agency who helps with drug treatment for pregnant women and women with children is closing. And I don't remember the name of the agency, but the CEO is Jim Coffey. Now, when this closes, will those people drop out of any help at all? Do they fall into one of these? Do you have to add some other mechanism to help people in that situation?
I would imagine that if those individuals were facing homelessness because their program was closing, that they could go and connect with coordinated entry. As someone else mentioned, coordinated entry doesn't necessarily find housing for people, but it can help to get them sort of on a list for a potential housing resource in the future.
Yeah, it just seemed like of all the demographics, that is one that is essential that we try to help those people.
Sure.
So I'm not sure, I might have missed it. You probably already stated this, but do you know roughly a total number of people who go into coordinated entry and what is the success rate on the outside?
So we typically see about 1,000 people a year connect with coordinated entry. We do what's called a resource screening, and this is the part that sort of collects brief information to get them on a list with about 800 of those people. Some people aren't necessarily homeless or whatnot, and they have a really brief interaction. But we screen about 800 people, or that was for 2022, about 800 people. That piece of it, as I mentioned, is to collect some brief information to potentially send a referral when these programs have openings. When we talk about success rate, coordinated entry is meant to be able to make these referrals. Now, the referrals are to different agencies that have housing programs. So the success rate is on those agencies to then connect with the individuals, and they're doing the service of getting them into housing and providing that housing support. So what I will say is when we look at the referrals, what we're trying to make sure happens with coordinated entry is that we're connecting with a variety of populations. You know, I think the previous woman mentioned women with children. We want to make sure we're connecting with that population and others so that we have a good pool of individuals that get prioritized for housing. And we do prioritize women with children into some of these housing programs.
So is it, if they get through the process and they're on the list, is that considered to be a success even though they don't get housing? Or is it a success when they do get housing?
I think it's a success if they do get housing, but we can't put that on the coordinated entry service because they're not part of that piece of it where they're getting the people into housing. What we look at is that we have enough people that we can make good referrals into these programs, that the individuals are eligible, they're a good fit for those programs that have openings. That's what we look at, and that's part of our conversation when we talk about who's doing coordinated entry and the different providers that we have. What we've found is the three that we're currently working with seem to get us a good variety of individuals. They all connect with kind of slightly different populations. And so we have the individuals there that we are able to make a referral into the program. But those programs, as I mentioned, the programs that then take the referral and then are connecting with the individual to say, okay, let's get you into housing. That's where I would say that the success rate is with those agencies.
So in order to be a good referral, is there in the screening process, is there a background check? Do you know what these people's background is, or?
If the program, it requires a background check, then that may be part of their eligibility screening for the referral. Yes, but it depends on the different projects, the housing projects. We don't do that as a sort of a standard for just coordinated entry.
Okay.
You had said something about they had to check in after entry every 90 days. How many people do you lose during that 3-month time? Would it be better if they could check in every 30 days and keep track of them a little better and make them more accountable?
Well, it's sort of this balance. I think there are a lot of people that do connect every 90 days, and we know and the reason we ask them to do that is because their situations can change, right?
Okay.
Someone might move from the area. They might, have found family or friends they can live with. So their situations might change. Having them check in is another contact with staff. And so if we bump that up to 30 days, then we're asking, the same amount of people to connect every 30 days versus every 90 days. And we'd probably have to increase some of that staff time to be able to do that.
Right.
So it's sort of this balance with that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I did some quick math. I know I shouldn't do quick math, but so you're saying there's about 1,000 people in coordinated entry every year. So that would be about $142-ish per person for just a referral to get more assistance from the government. Is that how that?
So they'll provide information on a variety of community resources when a person comes in. So it could be services that are government funded. It could be services that are privately funded. It could be like, hey, the community house, if you need a place to stay, go try the community house. So it's a variety of resources that they might, including, food resources or just depending on what an individual is interested in.
Okay, so there are private organizations that need coordinated entry to,
No,
No.
but no,
Okay.
it's not required, but the coordinated entry staff, and I think Mr. Crosby's brought this up before. There's a list of, it's like 7 pages long of
yes,
different
I've
community
actually
resources.
seen it.
Yeah. And that's what coordinated entry will provide individuals to say, look at all of these different resources that you could connect with in the community, depending on what you're looking for.
So we couldn't just have that readily available at like the office so that anybody could go in and just pick it up and be like,
Yeah.
oh, I have this.
Yeah, they do have it available. The difference is, and I think, so they'll do those general community resource referrals or giving information. Collecting this brief information for coordinated entry and then being able to make a referral into a specific housing program is different.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So they'll try to give individuals resources that they could go today and connect with and actually, get a resource today. Those actual housing referrals are few and far between. And so they try to make sure that someone has options when they walk in and then walk back out the door. But those actual referrals into those housing programs are few and far between. So we try not to get in that conversation about what's available in the community, try not to get people's hopes up that you come in, you're getting on this list and your ticket's going to be up,
somewhere,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mentioned about 1,000 people connect with coordinated entry. We end up doing about 100 to 120 referrals a year for those housing programs. So they're few and far between where we're actually able to say, okay,
We have
here's a
something for
referral.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just gotta ask one more. I don't mean
That's
to
the
drag
true,
this
that's
out
the true
forever, but-
definition of addiction. You gotta ask one more.
Exactly. Here's an example question, right? So I come in, I'm a homeless person and I go and I fill out the form. I'm in the database,
Mhm.
but nobody knows where I'm at, right? And so my day comes and it's like the computer kicks it out. Hey, Tim gets a free meal over at Stuffy's or something, Then do you like go out and search for Tim? Do you go out and look for him around the neighborhood because he's in the database, right? And I mean,
Yeah.
how would you award somebody their big prize if you can't find him?
So that has happened before. They're, go out and about trying to find somebody. There is typically a phone number that can be called to contact somebody. But if there's not, then there's some collaboration happening with the coordinated entry providers. Say, okay, has anyone know where so-and-so is? Can we find this person? And
Should we put him on a milk curtain? But I'm just wondering how many times this comes up, because if you're a homeless person, it's got to be like, how do you go find them?
Mhm.
And then how long does Tim's award get to stay on there? Is it like a lottery ticket where, after so much time, it wears out and I
Yeah.
can't collect my prize?
Right. They will attempt contact so many times. And if there's no contact made, then we move down the list. So it does happen.
This isn't actually a question. It's just like gratitude. Going from 800 to only being available to house maybe 125 out of those has to be hard on you. Is there a reason that it's not more than 125?
Oh, that number is dependent on, there's certain programs in the community that are connected to this process. And when they have someone that exits those programs and then they have an opening, then we try to get someone else in there. They do also make referrals to other community partners. So if someone is interested in an Oxford House, for example, they'll try to make referrals there. That doesn't have to go through coordinated entry, but they'll make sure the individual knows about that as a resource. So there is some other housing that happens outside of just this particular number. Yeah, that is a challenge, and it is hard on the providers because they're having that face to face with individuals where they're saying, I can't get you into housing today.
I'm sure, yes.
yeah.
I just thought it would be very hard, and I appreciate what you do.
Oh, thank you.
So I don't see any other hands up. Don't see anybody approaching the podium. Mr. Dahl, what would you like to do?
Since items 9, 10, 11 are all similar, would it be appropriate to just motion them all three? We've had good discussion on those. You know, these kind of things are difficult. I don't like when you see how government ties their hands and perpetuates these type of programs. HUD and the other one that was mentioned, you can't even talk to them unless you go through this program. So they really, I hate when they do that type of thing, but it's almost in my mind, it's an attempt to just perpetuate other programs. And I think these are helpful to the people that use them if they want to take the information and do right. There's not, and you've touched on it, there's not a ton of resources. You're not going to put everybody in everything. We just don't have that kind of resource out there. But with that said, I would move to approve item 9 to the emergency support shelter up to 35,000. Item 10 to Cowlitz Family Health Center in an amount up to 53,548, and item 11 to Community House on Broadway in an amount up to 53,568.
There's a motion on the floor to approve items 9, 10, and 11 in one vote. Or is there more discussion? Seeing none, let's call a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Those three pass. Actually, the single motion for all three passes. Now we go on to our final item. That one's interesting.
Now, our item 12 on the agenda is a contract with Lower Columbia CAP. This contract is to provide a group home setting. It serves up to 6 high-risk individuals. This is specifically a men's home, so it's high-risk men. When I say high risk, the individuals that get referred to this program are individuals who may be in and out of the jail, in and out of the emergency department, utilizing various emergency public services. So this project will house, like I said, up to 6 of these individuals in the program and help them to obtain and maintain stable housing in this home while they're working on some other goals. It could be treatment, it could be going back to school, could be a number of items, getting a job that will help them to eventually become a little bit more self-sustainable. So we've been partnered with Lower Columbia CAP on this project for a number of years. And you may notice in the past, the contract amount had been 96,000, I believe. This year it is 45,000 for the year, as there's been some other resources that have helped them to bring some of that cost down. They've not utilized that full 96,000 for the past few years. So we're just sort of truing it up to what has been utilized.
You know, gonna ask you numbers and I apologize for that. Over the years, how many men have been through here and what kind of turn, what, if we have a success rate?
Give me a second here. So this program has served in the past about 10 years, a total of 42 unduplicated clients.
42, okay.
And out of those clients, there have, the program itself has changed a little bit over the years. They kind of drastically shifted their model about 6 years ago, and that's when we saw the exit destinations change. So there was what we'll look at, like the exits back into homelessness and the exits to permanent housing options. So when we look back at that time, they changed. It was about 2017. There's since then, about 75% of the individuals have exited to those more permanent destinations. So we saw only 25% return to homelessness or exit to homelessness.
And you mentioned in the start of it that these are high-risk individuals. They've been in and out of jail.
Mhm.
Do they have issues with that? I mean, do we have reoffenders that lose a spot in this house because now they got a spot in a different house?
It has happened, yes.
Okay.
Yep. They do try to keep, when individuals move in, they have to agree to certain terms for staying at the house. And if they violate that agreement, then they may be asked to leave, and that has happened before.
So, Mr. Dahl, you asked a very good question, but implicit in it is an assumption of what success means.
Yeah.
And I've had trouble with success statements here for a long time, and it was a question that was asked earlier by some others at the podium. The problem is we don't have a good definition of success. Some people say, for example, with this house, if you manage to graduate to another housing, that's success. To me, it's success would be when I take someone who is draining the coffers of the public, going to the other side and now contributing to the coffers of the public. And I'll bet you by that definition, our success on all these programs is pretty dismal. It's just because you change the domicile address or something like that, but you're still on, like these people that probably get SSI, EBT, you name it all. And when in the past, I think it's been 96K the whole time I've been on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's astronomical. And now I'm asking, why 45K? What changed? Typically, things don't go down in price. So, yeah.
So this contract primarily was supporting case management time. There's the individuals who stay at the house have a case manager. They check in frequently. They have housing stability plans that they're working on. The last few years, there's been different programs, I think primarily funded by Medicaid, that can help with that case management time. And so if individuals are enrolled in one of those programs, then Medicaid gets billed instead of our contract for that. So that's part of why that cost has gone down.
Okay, so the reason to explore that is that I don't want us to be confused. You're still paying. It may not be 96K out of this pot of money, out of your taxpayer pot of money somewhere. Um, the area agency on aging and disabilities of Southwest Washington has an annual budget of about $30 million. A lot of that comes from Medicare and Medicaid. I'm just trying to tell you this thing, going back to what you said, there's so many little hands, the left and the right. You can't move the right without doing something to the left. And so be aware, always press and understand what those numbers actually mean, what they really translate into. And so this one, anyhow, there's a person at the podium.
Person, yes. This is not a new house. This is an existing house.
Mhm.
And this is the one on 31st
I think so. 33rd, maybe?
or 33rd. Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere over
Mhm.
there. Okay. Obviously that one's been there for a while, but the thing that we have learned since we got involved with Camp Alabama and the Cascade Way House,
Make sure you're talking to the microphone a little bit
a
more.
lot of this comes down to location, location, location.
Mhm.
What do we know about the cost to the neighborhood around this house?
I don't know. I would be happy to reach out to CAP and see if they've had conversations with nearby neighbors about complaints or issues in that neighborhood. I know when the project was first was moving into this house, and I think if Commissioner Weber were here, he could probably share with you. He may have been on city council at that time, but there was a lot of conversation with city council about the location and about concerns and all of that. But I would have to reach out and talk with CAP about recent, if there's been complaints or issues with surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, because, you know, the, the recent one, the house up on Cascade Way in Longview, there was a gentleman that they brought in and paraded as being a very good example of the kind of people that were going to be in the house. Within days, he got in big trouble and actually got kicked out of the house and caused a big turmoil up in the neighborhood.
Oh.
So now the neighbors up there are all up in arms. And you can't guarantee what's going to happen in these houses.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, the neighborhoods deteriorate, and just like in the whole Highlands, you know, obviously a huge thing compared to just a single house. But we need to be paying attention to the location. We need to be paying attention to the cost of the surrounding neighborhoods.
Mhm.
That's where the real cost is, I think.
Now, I believe I've been coming here for over a year now because I remember the last time this came up and I was complaining pretty hard about it then. And I had time to check it out then, and I checked out some other things about this place. Here's an expense that you don't realize, and it's not exactly an expense.
Hold up just a second. You remember when you tried to find where that house was? You were told no.
Yeah, Gina wouldn't tell me the address, and I had to actually go knock on doors down there until I found the guys. I said, "Are you the bums that are taking my money?" And it was like, "Oh yeah, we're the ones." Wasn't quite like that, but yeah, that was day one. At any rate, you know, when I looked into this before, and I remember this, and I remember saying it here, these Cap House, it doesn't pay any taxes. They make no contribution to the school, the road, or the fire department, you know, or the emergency service system. These guys get to run this house for nothing. And, you know, the 45,000's less, I'm a little less shocked. But I could go on about all these little details that are kind of popping into my head. I remember checking on this before, but I'm just going to put it like this. You guys vote for this, you're going to get the C word. Just be prepared.
I'm just doing quick math again. And there's 6 people in there and this is for case management. That makes 7,500 per person for case management. I'm not sure how long they spend on case management, how long it takes them to tell them these are your options, but that seems a little high.
One scary question that popped into my head was, is the reduction that the request from the county due to receiving funding somewhere else? For instance, I've been reading about how the McNeil Island is being depopulated and the sexual predators are being dispersed throughout the state. And I thought I saw on a map where Cowlitz County was to receive 7 of these people. That's the plan. It hasn't happened yet that I know of. But I'm keeping my eye out, for where they might show up. So that was one question. Could that explain the reduction in the ask of the amount? Secondly, is since this house is in Longview and Longview has recently decided to address homeless on their own by retaining their document recording fees to and use them within the city limits. Doesn't this fall under that umbrella?
Yeah, this particular funding doesn't have those types of boundaries applied. Some other state or federal funding that we see does, but because the city chooses to do their own housing program doesn't necessarily mean that that we would have to stop funding programs within the city of Longview. But that could be a policy decision of our board.
It's
I
a
agree with
super
some previous,
question.
I'm sorry.
It's telling, that was an excellent question. Maybe we can talk about it in a little bit.
I agree with some previous comments about these people not paying city taxes and fire protection, police protection, and school coverage and all those things that go along with it. However, I'm sure if we have to throw that in there, they just get added onto this damn number and we'd have to pay for that too. So anyway, I'm wondering if you're putting 6 people, and by definition, high risk is they may be sex offenders, they may be violent criminals, multiple in and out of jail. What was the other thing you said was in and out of the emergency room, I believe?
In and out of the emergency room. And I'll clarify, this particular project does require not a formal background check, but there are restrictions in who can stay at the house. And so an individual with a violent crime, for example, may not be eligible to stay, or a sex offender, because it's a group home setting. And so there are some restrictions on who can stay at the house.
Well, I guess I'm even more curious than I was before. So in and out of jail, what, as long as they're just a chronic thief, it's okay to stay there, but not if they're violent?
Right, having a violent crime, it can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but if someone was a very violent crime is the reason they were in jail, they may be excluded from being able to stay at the house.
So putting these people that are high risk all in the same house, doesn't that create a high risk situation all by itself?
Well, and that's why there are some restrictions, and there is these individuals are vetted thoroughly to make sure that they're a good fit for the rest of the individuals staying in the home as well. So we, as the ones looking to make the referrals, and with CAP as the entity doing this program, vet those referrals pretty thoroughly to try to make sure that we have a good fit for that group home setting.
It doesn't seem to me like it would be real reliable to ask somebody who is a habitual thief or whatever other circumstances fit the criteria to get in there, to ask that person who has that kind of a background to please sign an agreement that says you promise to obey by our rules, when they don't obey by society's rules. Apparently that's what's getting them in there. Okay.
I just thought of this quick question. Does CAP have a house like this that serves military veterans at all?
I'm not sure, to be honest, not one that we're part of funding.
Okay.
Hi, Lindy.
You're so cute. Just sit there so politely. So my, we have to keep her smiling. She has a very nice smile. One of my big questions is, does CAP have regulations to stipulate where they put those houses and how the neighbors feel? Do they have hearings prior to the placement of these homes or the people in them?
I don't know. For this contract, we're just talking about one home. And I know there was some of that vetting that happened when it was very first established. But I wasn't involved at that time, so I'm not sure the extent of all of that. And I'm not sure what process they do for some of their other homes.
I just remembered an important question from last year was, how many more are there of these houses? How much of this is going on? Is this just one house or are there several?
For this particular contract, it's just one house. I'm not
Okay.
sure if CAP has other houses they operate with different funding. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, do you know if they have any other houses like along these lines? I mean, I know you kind of answered that a little bit, but you said under this contract was,
Mhm.
you know, it seems like you're evading my question a little bit.
No, I don't want to speak for CAP because I don't
Yeah.
know all of the extent of the programs they operate. I just know the ones that the county is involved in
You say
funding.
ones, then is there others? It's the basic question. Are there
the-
more of these?
Not that the county is involved in funding.
All right, good for us.
Oh, okay. I know that you, I know you have to put these gentlemen somewhere. Okay, I do know that they have to transition somehow into the general public. And I have to agree, and I want to stress to you, location, location, location. Mainly because I had to have a shot in the hospital, and I was talking to the lady that was giving it to me, the nurse, and she was just livid. She'd gone to pick up her children in the Cascade School. And of course, that's where the Cascade House is. I can give you the address if you want to know, but I'm sure you know it. Anyways, as she was sitting there waiting for her children, two of the gentlemen from that house were in the parking lot, you know, watching the children. She thought that was extremely dangerous. She was totally threatened by that. And that's what the neighborhood is viewing. And they are, I mean, my hygienist herself lives 3 houses away from that house. She's livid. She wants them gone. And apparently I'm thinking the Cascade House is the one that Jay Inslee has put there. I don't think it's the county. I think it's a state house. I'm not sure. You might
It's
know.
not one the county is involved in.
Okay, then it's a state. And they've been told that these are the worst of the worst. And apparently within that quote, it would be sex offenders.
Mm.
And to have them by schools, and this is where I'm really, really adamant that these houses should not be in neighborhoods that are out close by a school. They should be, if anything, by a city where they could, at least they could go in for their job or whatever, but not be around children.
We have a Q&A. I'd like to address at the moment. The question was, where are the women with similar issues being housed? And that reminds me that we have an organization called Faithful Servants who have both a house for men and a house for the women. I've been to one for the women and one for the men. The one for the men is pretty notable. It's on South Pacific in Kelso. And I think at the time there were 13 men in there. Do you know how much the county funds them? Zero. I beg your pardon? I, okay. Right, okay, good. But again, from the, everybody's eligible for all these things, and so it's really hard to know how much it really costs you, the public. And thank you for that.
In answer to Tim's question, I just got a flash from God. Columbia Wellness has a couple of transitional houses in the Highlands as well. You know, so that kind of brings to a question to my mind, how do we get a handle on where all of these transitional houses are and who's actually funding them? Because we're all involved in the Highlands, so now we're going to figure out, you know, where these are if the people over there already don't know. But I mean, this is kind of pernicious. They just keep popping up.
Yeah, that is a serious problem. I don't have an answer. Where were you trying to go next?
So it just dawned on me with this discussion about who's funding these things, if this contract dropped from 90-some thousand dollars to $45,000 because Medicaid is more involved, is this basically the state is taking over more and more control of these things, so we have less and less to say about it?
You don't have much to say about it now. So I'm not
Oh,
sure.
That's the sad part. But right now, at least we're sitting here talking about it. If Medicaid's taking it over, the state's taking it over, we won't even be sitting here talking about it till we hear about problems afterwards.
Except you've been told from this bench that we have no choice. You may have elected us, but we have no choice. We got to follow the rules. And so what's the difference? I mean, I think we're on the same side. I think there's just the system is totally out of control. It's a rotten system, and we got to figure out how to get it down to where you are comfortable that what you're funding isn't something you find repugnant or duplicative or seductive to the problem. And I've been trying for 6 years to get some exposure on that.
I'm not trying to argue that you guys should vote against this or break the rules or to be violation of the state, whatever. I'm not arguing that point. What I am saying is at least we can sit here and talk about it and I can voice an opinion. If the state's doing it and they've got control of it and it's bypassing all the public input and all the ability to discuss it publicly until after the fact, now we find out that there's a house next door to my house. And there are two houses, about 5 houses from mine, one on my side of the street that is for men and one across the street that is for women that I know that are there because they posted them and they had public hearings a few years ago. But my point is, at least right now, we get to talk about it. And I don't want to, and I know about it before the fact that it's happening. And I appreciate being able to have the public input. That's kind of what the free speech and let's talk about it is. The other side of that coin is if the state has total control of it and it doesn't even come through you guys, we don't even get to talk about it.
I understand your preoccupation, but I think it's somewhat of a moot point. We are on the path where we won't be able to have these discussions, but at the moment, whether a contract is or is not, we can still talk about it here. So you're not going to be denied the opportunity to address things. Now, there's a flow of information all over the place, and we get to see a little bit of it. I've contended if the public could see everything all at one time, they'd be so appalled about so many things that things would actually change. So I would actually not want to be complicit with a program that I think is not a good program. It may be, I used an analogy earlier today. in a discussion where we tend to want to help people. Here's this heroin addict who's having horrible withdrawal pain, so we'll help him out right now. We'll give him a fix. But what about the long term? And we forget about the long term. And what we have here is I just as soon not give them a fix. And we can always have that discussion. Did you have anything you want to add on that, Rick?
Well, I have some, this program highlights what you've heard me talk about. Over 10 years, we've spent close to $1 million for 42 people. And when you get into these things and you're funding bodies and you're funding that type of stuff, it never ends. If you want to have one of these places and it makes sense, I always prefer the capital investment at the beginning. It wouldn't have been $1 million, and then the organization needs to run it themselves and keep us out of it. But this is this is a real struggle for me to say that I'm going to continue taking money out of your wallet we've spent $1 million on this thing over 10 years for 42 people that go back and forth between jail and stuff. People that have made a decision to not fit in with society and do the things we need to do. And I don't think I have the right to continue taking money out of your wallet for that.
Shannon has her hand up somewhere.
And you just had your hand up. Go ahead, Shannon.
Good morning. I really am on the struggle bus with this because, why are we not taking in consideration of location? When we're thinking about the location, I mean, come on. Have we not learned anything? Have we not? Have you not learned anything from the Highlands? It is a disaster here. It is a complete disaster here, especially after the little pallet home thing going on and the people that are self-exiting, and you want to place one of those homes near a school and it's dangerous, it's at-risk people. You're going to have people angry if they're not already, I'm hearing they're already angry. And on top of that, if it doesn't go well, like it's not going well here, it's going to be chaos. I don't understand why we can't think of the location and think, that's near a school. We probably shouldn't go there. That's a little too close to a park. We probably shouldn't go there. That is way too close to housing areas. We should probably think of a different location. I don't understand. I don't understand.
I appreciate you giving me this opening because there's been a lot of misinformation about what really happened between the county and Camp Alabama. And one point that you just mentioned now is a crux. Longview insisted it had to be in Longview. And
They did.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to house people, it's housing them somewhere away from where they can do harm. And for me, I would have been happy to pick a place in the county someplace, somewhat remote. And of course, the argument is, well, they're far from the services. Well, the services people are making a fortune off of them. Just have them go to wherever it is. And
the services people have vehicles.
And it turns out that Longview was intransigent completely about price and location. Well,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I agree. It really upsets me when we can't, I don't know. I'm at a loss of words when I think of, we're going to put another one here. And a lot of us in the Highlands know about the ones that are here, about the little houses that are here. We know about them. Not everybody, I guess, but a lot of us do. It's just not being respectful, I guess, and then not to have these so-called good neighborhood acts or whatever they're called. I just feel like you're not you as in the county, but the people that are putting this together, whether it be Inslee, whether it be the state, whoever is doing it, the entity that is responsible, they're not really, they don't care. They're just putting it together. And then those that are upset because it's been put together are the heartless ones.
Yeah, you could get me on the soapbox here because we are
Yeah.
committing social suicide. We're committing national suicide. But people don't understand even the most fundamental thing. The commissioners here are commissioners for 112,000 people.
A
But we're
lot of
supposed,
people.
we're supposed to bleed the 112,000 for the 500 that seem unwilling to participate in society.
Yeah. I wonder how many are going to participate in the process, because I think of when I see what's going on over here where I live, and I see how they have no attempt to even step forward. I just want to see something that works. I want to see something where a group actually is going to come in and do what they say they're going to do. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see another scandal like what we have here in our backyard. If I make sense, I hope I do, but we're just so frustrated.
Okay,
And I don't
Shannon,
want to see
thank
other
you. We
people
got
to
it.
go through it. So
Okay, thank
thanks
you.
for listening.
We have another hand up from Lynn. You're muted, Lynn. You're muted, Lynn. While Lynn's trying to become unmuted, Mr. Dahl, this is pretty close to our citizen the comment time, so I'm just going to let things go, even though it may not be specifically on this motion.
Yeah, I didn't know what you wanted on that. If you wanted a motion, to get it on here to be voted, I will oppose it, but.
Yeah, in that sense, I think, yeah, if you would make the motion and then you can oppose it, it's just, when you do that, we can close it.
Yeah. So is that what you'd like?
Yeah.
And I'll say right up front, I appreciate everything you do, Jenny. Jenny, you're in a difficult arena right now, and you handle it well, and we appreciate that. But I make a motion. I'm making a motion to.
Kind of
Yeah.
sticks in your throat.
I'll make a
doesn't it?
motion to approve Lower Columbia Cap Pride Housing for the high-risk individuals not to exceed 45,000. This is a contract between January 1, 2023 and December 31st of 2023.
I'm going to go ahead and ask for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say opposed.
Opposed?
Opposed. Motion does not carry.
Thanks, Gina.
Lynn, we still haven't been able to hear from you. We see you as being muted on this side. So we're going to proceed. If, as soon as you can fix that, please interrupt us.
We're ready for constituent comment?
Yes.
Okay, so we've been talking about programs here that are already in place in your struggle over those. Let's talk about what may be another program coming. And I'm going to address the one regarding, we hear rumors, we hear reports and news and things about the sex offenders being closed at McNeil Island and they being relocated across the state to a variety of counties. First of all, I look at you as being, although you say we're kind of handicapped in these things, this is a proposed new program. Supposedly, you, the county commissioners, and the county sheriff are our only form of defense, protest, protection, etc. for this program. So I am asking several things of you and supporting you in this. First of all, we need transparency. We need to know the truth and the facts that are coming down on us. The people of Tenino already had an assembly, and I don't know what's going on up there, but we need to be able to know what's going on and be able to display and be aware and stand up and support you and have expectations on the people around us. More importantly, as we just said, we need to have responsibility and accountability. We can't have Olympia or the feds throwing stuff at us and then saying, oh, it's the government, it's the government. I want to see someone that is held accountable and responsible for the actions. It's reportedly that these are sex offenders, serious sex offenders, and the probability of reoffense is high. And so now one person that gets harmed by one of those is harmed for life. We can't accept that. So we need to have responsibility. And so I stand up before you to say, don't take anything from Olympia or the feds without having someone appointed as responsibility. And if it's Inslee that shuts the facility down, then we need to have his picture on the facility as being the responsible agent. So in summary, accountability, responsibility, transparency on this issue before your 100,000 constituents here in Cowlitz County. Thank you.
So you brought up faithful servant. So I just wanted to tell you that's the house on Cascade Way that has just recently been put in without Cascade Way's knowledge. We did not know about it until they wanted DOC money, and then they had to let us talk. And then really it didn't matter because they were going to do whatever they wanted to anyways. So we discussed as a community some options. And they told us to go to city council. Well, some of our elected told us to go to city council and get them to be on our side for legislation. Not that I think that Longview City Council cares. So if possible, if there is ever legislation, I would love the county commissioners to be a part of that and stop this insanity of just putting houses wherever you want. We are literally, that house is literally less than 1,000 feet from the back end to Cascade. And I just find that to be awful because what their plan is not to have sex offenders, but it's just a plan. So plans change. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Would you care to comment on that at all, Rick?
I was kind of saving for when we have of our meetings, we need to, I got this thing sitting here and says need to do something and I'm trying just spinning wheels. Well, what do you do? It's one of those feelings that, I talk about with people. Sometimes you feel a little bit helpless here because of all the stuff you're trying to slog through, but this is an item being forced on us and really they don't have a right to force that on the counties. The counties have a right to make those decisions, and I'm frustrated sitting here because I don't know exactly how to push back on that, but I think we'll try.
I'm sure we'll try.
Well,
I
well-
can help you about this much.
Yeah.
So the way I can help you this much is just, we're not afraid to try and
Yeah.
bite off something that we think is reasonably achievable. It doesn't make any sense to do something that is not achievable. So if you think of our Board of Health meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, we were told there were scofflaws and something like that because we weren't buying completely what was told we had to buy. So anyhow, we're not afraid to do it, but we have to be practical. Now, the other end of practical is the moment you let anybody put their hand in your pocketbook or get their hand in on your bank account, you start to lose any of the rights, and it just starts to grow. In this case, we have no control over the Department of Commerce. I assume it's Commerce, or did you mean the Corrections? Department of Corrections. We have no control over either of them, I should have said, and saved myself some speech agony. But that is the problem we have. There are too many funding sources for all these programs, too many back doors. And until you can strangle the funds, you can't do much. I've been accused of job owning too much here and elsewhere. That's all I can do, is try to get people to see what they're doing. They're killing off the future. You mentioned the huge $1 trillion of debt we have. Everybody laughs at that, but who's going to pay for that? It will come due, and it's starting to come due.
Yeah.
So I'll repeat what I said. If we were asked, can we do a facility out in the woods someplace, I'd probably be inclined to entertain that. I wouldn't want to foist it on any city, because a city by definition is a bunch of people got together. Anyhow, speak.
All right, so my main topic today, and here's a great way where we can kind of get a little bit back, and it's going to be mostly symbolic. Now, I've talked about, it's kind of funny because this house thing, now I'm going to talk about something that I've talked about here like a year ago. And it's this fact of us being a sanctuary county when it comes to immigration. This all came down in 2017. I wish Dennis was here because I'll bet he voted for it. It started in 2017 with an executive order from the king himself, 1701. And the fact is, I don't know at what point, because I asked this question in the past. I've asked it of the sheriff. How did this happen? How did we get to be a sanctuary county? And everybody says, well, somebody else did it. But the fact is, well, that's what we are, a sanctuary county. And it's like, I could go on about all the reasons that we shouldn't be a sanctuary county. And the fact is it's kind of just like, it's kind of like you you allow a homeless camp in your town. All the homeless people hear about it and they come. You make yourself a sanctuary county, same thing. It's like, okay, I can go operate here and I won't be hassled at all about my immigration status. And, it's wrong in every way. If you want me to go on and on about it, I will, but I'll make a motion myself right now. I make a motion that we remove ourselves from sanctuary county status. There you go.
Hold on a second. Sanctuary needs to be defined. Now, in this specific case, there is a constitutional issue there that drives my assessment of the matter. If an agency, like if Department of Commerce calls up and calls the sheriff here and says, oh, could you detain somebody like Tim Shea and hold him for us? Should that take place? And the answer is no. The only way that we should hold people is with a legal judicial order from a judge, not from an agency. We have rogue agencies all over. We all know that. We cannot give them the power to decide who goes to jail, who gets picked up, and who doesn't get picked up. At the time, 2017, I discussed this good deal with our sheriff at the time. And that was the issue on the table, because DOC, the other DOC in this case, would call up and say, hold so-and-so. We would hold them as long as our legal standard, legal limit would apply. DOC would want us to exceed that. Hold them on immigration, we'll be by next week to pick him up. No, you got to be by here this afternoon. We are releasing him this afternoon. We'd be glad to release him to you, but we cannot legally hold him for another 7 days for your convenience.
Yeah, you can operate that way just fine without the title of sanctuary county. You don't have to have that title to do that. What you're expressing there is that we got a lot of laws, you know what I mean? This isn't an RCW issue. This is a labeling issue. You can do that, what you're talking about, just the same without the label.
Right. I never signed up for a label. I particularly don't like labels. You have seen me argue here. What's the definition? What's the definition? What's the
Right.
definition? This is a highly misused, hackneyed term. People have been asking me, why don't we do a Second Amendment sanctuary county? And I'm against that because we are presumably a constitutional county, and sanctuary doesn't mean anything when you're already obeying the laws of the Constitution.
Okay, good. We agree. So what about my motion now? Are we going to vote right now, or you want my more input?
I didn't hear a motion from Rick Dahl.
I'm just saying, you know, this is not something that's going to really change anything. I already have talked to the sheriff about this long ago, and it's not going to, it won't really technically affect anything other than the fact that we're at least when I'm an illegal immigrant with a load of fentanyl in my car, and I say, hey, you know what? They're a sanctuary. I'll just go there because I won't be hassled because I'm an illegal immigrant, so it gives me some kind of special rights in a way. You know, it's like,
Yeah, we don't subscribe to that. They have broken so many laws that I
oh,
can't
I'm just
imagine.
saying, let's get this thing off the
And
books,
then
man.
don't forget, regarding other sanctuaries, we take a look at the money. As long as the money is available, these people, we got to control the money. One way we do it is by turning these bad contracts away. We just did that now, and there'll be other contracts where last year we should have driven away the $9 million rental and utilities subsidy because that works against you. But
Yeah, well, there's a whole bag of stuff. This is one of them. Let's get rid of that.
so, Lynn, you still have your hand up. Are you able to speak now? I still show you muted.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Sorry, I was unable to attend the meeting this morning, and I am in an appointment, but I heard the Faithful Servants House was brought up on Cascade Way in Longview. And I'm not sure what was said, but Faithful Servants is a program that is a transition house for men and women to get back into society after they've come off of drugs or alcohol. The DOC's part in that is releasing them to our program because they've already completed a program inside of the jail to make them eligible to come into the Faithful Servants House, to continue to go back into society after they've paid whatever dues they have paid. They don't allow sex offenders in these houses. There is no dangerous people housed in these houses. So whatever talk is going around is very unfactual, and people don't know all the facts. The neighbors are getting in an uproar. They're being terribly rude to anyone who goes to visit this house, board members, what have you. And there just needs to be some light shed on this subject. And that's all I wanted to say.
Well, I thank you. I appreciate that perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything? Oh, good. Okay.
Well, that sounds to me like an education issue that somebody needs to really work on so that everybody understands what faithful service housing is then. Anyway, that's not why I came up here. I'm wondering, in the previous discussions about halfway houses and the monies for the Lower Columbia cap, those types of things. I'm wondering if there's a way that the county can adopt a building code or a standard that says that if CAP or if any organization wants to create a group housing, family home, or some type of structure that's going to potentially have hazards to society, that they have to abide by certain criteria, whether it's public hearings or whatever. If there can be a standard that the county can adopt that says, you know, there's some really strict limitations you got to meet in order to be in our county. I don't know if you can do that or not, just an idea.
I would always seek counsel from our attorneys. I believe the answer is very difficult for us, and in some sense, maybe it should be that way. The cities themselves are virtually autonomous. And so they've got their own building and planning department, they've got their own police department, and it goes on and on. We have control over the unincorporated areas, and we're not the problem at the moment, but I think if it were to come before us a situation where, I mean, you see, we are far more open than any of the municipalities. You want to come and talk, you want to express it, you want to even make a motion, we will listen pretty well. And I'm going to need you to have a chair right here. Yeah. And so I'm hoping the PA is on and hearing. Let me see if.
Well, my thought is, like in Tenino, the issue that there was a home out in the country. It was out in the county, it wasn't within city limits, as I understand. That they were going to move all these sex offenders in from McNeil Island. And the people rose up against that, and good for them. But I'm just thinking on a preemptive basis, if you had a standard in place, if that's possible, if you had a standard in place, at least to protect the county side of things, maybe the cities would take a look at it and consider that it might be a good thing for them to look at.
Yeah, I would need counsel from people here, but my impression is that if I can avoid putting in something like that, but you count on your electeds doing the right thing, that would be typically my preference. You mentioned when you when you first sat down this last time, something about communication, and I think it's really important to allow people to use their brain rather than the checkbox. I've had lots of discussions with the planning commission over these things. And there are plenty of checks and balances through there, but maybe there is something that should be done. I'm just leading off the top of my head on that.
Yeah, I'm sure that probably Lewis County didn't have anything in place to protect the Tenino's people up there. And the people had to rise up and be heard to do it. Otherwise, that thing, if somebody hadn't tumbled to that, the state would have just rolled right on through with the way that was all set up. That would all happened and nobody would have been the wiser till it was all over and done with.
Well, the secret there, of course, is what you all know. It's transparency and responsibility and accountability. And we tend to, that doesn't seem to work too well. Nobody, like I said before, if the public actually knew what was going on all these things, I think we'd have a different story, and that applies all the way around. I don't know how to crack that except a little bite at a time. Before you guys showed up, there was no cracking of anything. Now there is. McNeil Island, I think that decision has been reversed. At least I read that this morning, I think.
I haven't seen.
I haven't seen that either. I hope to God that's true, but if they were going to do it, I think the first place they should have gone is Bainbridge Island, right alongside of our lovely governor's office, our house rather.
How dare you? He's,
Yeah,
oh,
how
never
dare
mind.
me.
I'll
I would have
skip
bought the
that.
tents to put them there.
Yeah.
But anyway, appreciate your time and I appreciate you gentlemen and the staff putting up with everybody's sometimes not so pleasant comments, I'm sure. I thank you for your time and I do appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I think it's reciprocated.
Yeah.
Perhaps things are different in Connecticut or Delaware, but here in Cowlitz County, being a natural born citizen of Washington State was not enough to earn a high school diploma. We had to memorize and know a few key documents which serve as points in being a citizen. The Declaration of Independence. So we understand through the generations that we are endowed by our Creator with certain natural and unalienable rights, which are protected by the Constitution. You know, the thing. We had to have a working understanding of the Constitution and the first 13 amendments. Even in so doing, not pick and choose which we found more appealing or tweaking aloud. I'm here exercising my First Amendment. Another point to be made is about a month ago, Judge Gary Basher was here. He was presiding over the newly elected officials taking their oath of office. I promise to fulfill my duties as your positions to the best of my ability and to uphold and protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help me God. God is used in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag and in this oath to remember there is a higher power to be accountable to, not a higher man, a higher power. In my opinion, the oath of office should be posted in this meeting hall as a reminder to all the officials. They're aware of the oath they took. Perhaps much better use of wall space than Inslee's mugshot up there. The whole fact that you are defending the Constitution. We the people are aware that there are others that live life according to skewed principles of causing chaos to force their order. Many minions are used for this purpose. My kids growing up would call these types tools. Tools are useful idiots, not actually serving a purpose other than to be name callers. People who can use big words with very little content or useful information, often abusing the first to eat up time with just one more thing after just one more thing. Oh, I've got one more thing. They have a need to waste time to end any productive dialogue. But we still allow them to exercise that precious First Amendment. It's one of our freedoms. In conclusion to this rebuttal or whatever, it's the facts. If a person cannot stand sitting here and listen to others during a public meeting, perhaps they should review the meeting at a later date when you can fast forward everybody else's right to speak. That's all I have to say. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
sirs,
you.
for doing you're doing a wonderful job. Thank you for allowing the citizens to speak. This is how information is garnered, how we know what's going on, where we're coming from. You don't have all the answers, and neither do we, but through communication, we get pretty darn close to what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there are no hands, and I don't see anybody else approaching. Do we have anything on the agenda that
Don't forget the motion. Hold on.
a motion of emotion?
You correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, but I think what he may have been referring to was a possibility of rescinding that 2017 resolution that declared this county as a sanctuary county. Can you just remove it, rescind it?
The clerk will find it for us and we will look at it. That was quite specific and we should be able to address that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the recycling location on Industrial Way.
Yeah, if you could move the microphone quite
Oh,
close
yeah,
to you.
sorry.
It's-
Yeah, I'm short. The recycling center on Industrial Way, I understand, I read in the paper that it's going to be closed because of abuse, people dumping excess garbage there, and a new location is going to be found. Is that correct?
I didn't think it was Industrial Way. I thought it was.
It's on the
Willow
corner of
Grove.
Ocean Beach Highway and Industrial Way.
Oh,
It's actually in Rick Dahl's area.
Yeah.
it's his fault.
I've come to learn District 3 is big. A lot of things in District 3. I know the area you're talking
Okay,
about. It's
yeah.
right by the stoplight there. You
Yeah,
can- you
the
can
reason
see it
I'm
there.
addressing that is,
Yeah.
people living west of that, which is where I've lived for 28 years. If you're coming into town and you're gonna recycle stuff, you drop it off there, it's handy, and then you go do other things. I've been frustrated by the abuse I've seen in the last few months. My idea was, is it possible that you could install a security light, video and have it paid for by any license plate that they're showing that they're dumping, they get a ticket in the mail, the registered owner. Is that a possibility?
Yes, I think so. But it's a little more complicated in that, and I would
Always
certainly.
is.
Yeah, always is. I would certainly talk with the attorneys. I have, a couple of years ago, I walked along in some forestry area that actually had a vehicle path to it on the other side of a gate. In any event, there was a bunch of garbage thrown there and they had
Mhm.
names on it. And so trying to pursue that, I find out that we have no legal mechanism that seems to force a fine and force the payment. Otherwise, it's like we've allowed people to become thieves in stores, the shoplifting. Well, the pursuit of something like this, I will look into it. I'm sure Mr.
It's-
Dahl is appreciative.
Yeah, absolutely. You deserve having us at least look at that option and see if we can make something work. So,
Well, I guess my question is that if you're driving down Ocean Beach Highway and you throw a sack of garbage out, will you get a ticket for it?
well,
Yeah, if you get caught.
I think, in the past, I know you would, and I can tell you two instances that I know. I was working for US Bank, and this was in the late eighties in Federal Way. We had a guy that worked in the credit card department, and he'd travel in the company car. And he threw a cigarette butt out of the company car, and the license plate got reported to the Department of Ecology, and US Bank got a ticket. And it come down to the gentleman driving the car. So I know there is some recourse for that. And then in the nineties, we lived up in out of Auburn, Black Diamond area, and somebody stole our garbage, looking through something, and went out and dumped it. Well, they found our name on it, and we had to go out and clean it up. So I know there was at some point in time some enforcement activity, because I've seen it on two.
That's why my thinking was not the person, the vehicle.
Yeah,
The license plate, the person that is the registered owner of that vehicle will get a ticket in the mail.
yeah.
And then it's their responsibility. If somebody had borrowed their vehicle, they settle it with them.
Yeah, well, I'll guarantee you that employee didn't throw no cigarette butts out the window anymore.
Yeah, just, you may not have seen one of our workshops 2 weeks ago, maybe. We hammered on this. We proposed that environmental health unit come to us and talk to us about what they needed to do this. And we purposely expressed if we have to add a staff member purposely for that, we would probably do it.
Yeah.
So pending them coming back with a proposal of how to do it.
Well, so how is it paid, right? So that's my thinking was with, even if it was only one, motion sensitive security system that would record it, the cost of having somebody follow that, address it, send a ticket in the mail, I would think that would probably offset whatever cost is involved in setting it up.
I'm not, first order, this kind of expenditure doesn't bother me because it's protecting your life or property. And protecting public property is high on my list. What do we do about vandals? What do we do every time a bathroom is destroyed and all of that? We just don't respond very well. And we have to change the culture. That's why when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, we were pretty serious about we will spend what needs to be spent to get these people in line. It's not a money raising venture. In fact, my primary interest is I'd like to take those people and spank them in the public square. But barring that, I'd like to spank their checkbook in the public square.
Yeah.
Well, and it just seems to me the easiest way would be that the registered owner, I got a ticket one time because I had another person driving my vehicle, went through a school zone about 5 or 10 miles over. I got a ticket in the mail for it because it recorded that license plate. Even though I wasn't there, I had nothing to do with it. So to me, it's accountability that if you pull a vehicle in there, that you're responsible to make sure that you follow the rules that are put up on those signs there.
You may be misunderstanding my statements. At no time is my intent to say, no, we wouldn't put a camera up there, or we wouldn't do this or wouldn't do that. There are many issues that get tied into place. And I never promise something I can't do. I can promise to look into it. And we've already begun that process.
Okay, and the other thing is that, and I'm it's speculation here, but I would think there's a lot of people living west of that location because it's so handy to drop it off which is what I do. I drop off, cans and cardboard and stuff, go into town, do what I gotta do, because I'm out in the Mill Creek area, so you don't go to town just on a whim. And I wonder how many people would go, I'm not gonna mess with it because there's a new location that's not as easily accessible. So in a way, you're maybe changing locations could contribute more to people not recycling as much.
There's some interesting issues. I don't remember exactly, but the county pays for those recycling centers because recycling in current day is still not cost effective. Recycling is subsidized. We all feel good. We recycled but in fact, it ends up a cost. A lot of that, well, anyhow, I would want, and I'd look to see if I had anybody from the landfill on here, but I don't.
Well, I've spoken to a couple of people from waste control and they say, well, this is county, they handle all that. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and this is a good place to see you, although maybe you'll come and see us again.
You never know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything else?
I don't.
So thank you, everybody. I think we'll close the meeting. The meeting's adjourned. Trouble, trouble, trouble.